Welcome back to another episode of Out of Home Insider, the loudest voice in out of home. At AWS, one of the biggest conferences of the year in Las Vegas, is just a few weeks away, which makes today's episode that much more timely. Today's guest is Jeremie Watkins. Jeremie is the founder and CEO of Spotlight Outdoor, one of the premier publishers in the Las Vegas market. We talk about everything that makes Las Vegas such a unique out-of-home market, how the out-of-home landscape there has changed over time, the tips and tricks to be ultimately successful with your campaign in Las Vegas, especially if you're planning a conference type of campaign. So sit back, relax, enjoy this episode, and without further ado, let's go.
Welcome everybody to the Out-of-Home Insider Show, a podcast like no other, hosted by the one and only Tim Rowe. Get ready to have some knowledge dropped on you and to be entertained, because nothing's more valuable than food for your brain. So sit back, relax, we're about to dive in as the best industry podcast is about to begin.
Jeremie, I'm really excited. I would say for the listening audience and the viewing audience, having you back, but we've actually already had this conversation one time. Unfortunately, the file became corrupted. You've been kind enough and willing enough to come back and do a re-record. So we're going to try to capture lightning in a bottle a second time here. Jeremie, thanks so much for being here.
No, Tim, anytime. I appreciate you having me. And hopefully the sequel's better than the original.
I think that it's got the potential to, because we've already now had a practice run at it. We've got a really good sense of some of the stuff that I think would really resonate with the audience. And we're going to do our best to guide that conversation. Jeremie, we start with everybody, the origin story. How the heck did you get in and out of home?
Oh man, Tim, I was living in Manhattan Beach, and I got a job offer to come to Vegas, right? And my degree's in sports management. And so I came out here to work with an arena football team called the Las Vegas Gladiators. And I had a short stint there. My boss ended up going off to to manage a mobile billboard company called Big Traffic. This is back, 2005, 2006. And so, shortly after he took the role there, he picked up the phone, and I was making, kind of peanuts at the time, and said, "Hey, why don't you come over here and jump into sales?" And so kind of at the time in my early career, I hadn't really figured out what I wanted to do yet, and nothing had really clicked. And so lo and behold, I fell in love with outdoor and out of home. And I became a sales rep for a company called Big Traffic, basically selling mobile billboard trucks in Vegas at a time when they weren't really as accepted as they are now, so you can only imagine back then knocking on the doors of Caesars Entertainment and MGM Resorts. And so, yeah, that's how I got my start here in Vegas back in, again, 2005, 2006, and out of home. I've been here ever since.
It's pretty awesome. I want to double click into what is the mobile billboard market of Las Vegas, because there's some unique nuance, but maybe take us back in time to that early inception phase where mobile billboard trucks were new on the Vegas Strip, right? That's the Yesco iconic building, all of this digital neon over the course of time. Yesco has obviously expanded into being a great outdoor company, but Vegas has its roots, or outdoor in a way has its roots in Vegas, but mobile billboards, you're saying, were pretty new, and probably like you had to do some explaining along the way. What was that like?
Big time. So Tim, it was interesting because at the time, people kind of, the idea of a mobile billboard truck were those kind of girls direct to you trucks. And so that was really, the first comment was, "Hey, are those the girly ads?" And it was like, no, we actually have a legit business. I want to say at the time there was maybe 11 trucks in the entire market. And so it was tough, from the standpoint of what the perception of the medium was. But, to us, it was very simple and easy to be able to say, hey, you're going to have a 200 square foot ad directly in people's face where they're walking or driving on the Las Vegas Strip. And you control the message, you control the route, you control the time. And so I just found it to be a very simple pitch in that regard. And, it just kind of took off, right? I think that the clients were really understood that. I think once they understood the legitimacy of the company Big Traffic at the time, we weren't doing any of those, provocative ads. And I think when they saw the effectiveness and just kind of the lack of out of home waste, right? They were only paying for the time they were on the road. And so they could really control that from a messaging standpoint, whether it be a show that was running only on the weekends, we could really target that weekend crowd, or if it was a gaming message, clients wanted to run throughout the entire year. So it's interesting. You go from 11 trucks to now, I want to say the ordinance allows like 100. I don't know.
And what does that mean? The ordinance, so Las Vegas as a municipality only allows there to be 100 mobile billboard trucks. Is that correct?
So back in my, former years,
sure.
right? So back when I was the owner of Create, yes, I think the mobile billboard started to take off so much that Clark County, Las Vegas, became the only municipality to actually create the first mobile billboard ordinance done in the United States. And it wasn't only surrounding the quantity. I think more importantly, it was surrounding the quality, right? You couldn't be pulling an ad on a truck. You had to carry the proper insurances. There were actually safety guidelines, so many things that are involved in the business as a whole. And so, because I think the mobile billboards really kind of, the Vegas Strip became known for them, so Clark County saw the opportunity to say, hey, if we're going to do this, let's do it right. Let's create some standards. And so there you have it.
It's an interesting microcosm. And I think we could come back and just snip out that kind of 5 or 6 minutes in there. It's a master's class on selling mobile billboards. It's such a practical way that you laid it out. I really appreciate that. But also is evidence of, hey, we were having so much success that it was creating some, inconsistencies and maybe some unscrupulous practices and things that were compromising it. So it became so big that the government had to step in. I think that truck side nationally, or maybe even internationally, almost wishes that was a problem, was that it was doing so well that we needed a government to step in. Not saying that we need more government oversight, but that's a testament to how much success there was in the market.
Yeah, no, there was a ton. And I think the other, challenge that what was happening is, the Las Vegas Strip, right? The really kind of core of it, you're looking at a little over 2 miles long. Mm-hmm. And the reality is, if you didn't have control over the quantity of billboards, you're going to create a traffic flow issue, right?
Could be an issue.
And so I don't know where they came up with that figure. 100 was the right one, but if they allowed things just to continue on, you could have 100, 200, 300, 400, and now you're running to issues of a guest experience, right? I mean, people still want to get from their Uber from the airport to the hotel. You want to be able to basically travel up and down. So it became so welcomed and had done so well, create so much value for clients that at a certain point they had to kind of hit the brakes and just not overcrowd the streets. So interesting. And obviously you're a Las Vegas local. You've been in the market now 2 decades. And your own portfolio and Spotlight has since emerged from really this beautiful, inception moment that was a long time in the making. So tell us about Spotlight. Who is Spotlight? How is it different than obviously the truck side conversation that we've had so far? Spotlight, premium inventory, some of the most iconic placements in Las Vegas. A lot of that really developed from scratch, things that were not traditional ad spaces that you've helped develop over the last few years. I'd love for the audience to get an understanding of who Spotlight is and what it is that y'all are doing. No, thank you, Tim. So Spotlight was, the embryo of it to kind of what we are now. It started with the touchdown towers, which are essentially,
Sure.
the elevator wraps that connect the pedestrian bridges on Las Vegas Strip. And the reason I bring those up is those kind of started from the create media days with the mobile billboard trucks. And we realized we had to be a little bit more than just mobile trucks. We wanted to diversify and expand. And so we saw open inventory on these big 40-foot tall glass, elevator wraps, and realized that there was, some nuances as to why you can advertise on there. There were county property on private land. There were existing, easements that had to be basically granted in. And so started there from like the iconic space standpoint. And, that began with a partnership with Caesars Entertainment. That really parlayed into more elevator wraps on the Strip and partnerships through MGM Resorts, partnerships through the Showcase Mall. And so then about Spotlight started about a year and a half ago when I separated from Create Media, which obviously they're very well known for the mobile billboard trucks. And from the elevator wraps, we formed a partnership with Caesars. I think they had been really pleased with, kind of the revenue generated, that they opened up an RFP for their marquees on the Las Vegas Strip, which again, when you talk about ordinances, there had been some loosening of regulations on the Strip to allow essentially additional national advertisers on the marquees. And so we won that. And COVID hit. And I think what ended up happening, Tim, is it kind of created an opportunity to kind of leave the mobile billboard history that I had behind, and can kind of move off into a new direction. And so I sold Create Media, focused on the billboard trucks, and basically took that elevator touchdown tower inventory, took that marquee inventory, and started Spotlight in February of 21. And here we are. And so that's kind of allowed us to focus on unique advertising opportunities on the Strip. We just landed the Lids Digital Spectacular.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, which is really the only unit so far that really lends itself to that 3D forced perspective application. I don't know if you guys have been able to see, we've been able to really kind of knock it off with some really cool ads, right? From, the really cool things Cirque du Soleil's doing. They were the really first big brand to jump up on the board. Aristocrat had an incredible, 3D Buffalo coming at you during G2E. And what's great is that there's a lot more interest, a lot more things coming on for next year with that particular screen. And so, yeah, exactly. Yeah,
got some of it up here on screen for the listening audience. Definitely come back and check out the YouTube, and we'll link to Spotlight Social, because it's full of the content for this canvas is really such a unique opportunity. And I'm assuming, and I would love to hear the feedback from the brands, the creative canvas that this is. They're using it in exciting ways. They're not just throwing a brand ad up there and saying, hey, I've got a whole bunch of shiny space to throw this thing up on. They're really taking risks. They're testing limits. What's that feedback been like from the brands around opportunities like the Lids Tower?
Yeah, so what was interesting is I'm almost, Tim, even more excited for what's to come for next year, because if you really think about it, that this board just became available mid-year, right? So you have a lot of brands already planned out their media spend. And so when we introduced the board, I think it was really Cirque du Soleil really saw it along with our partnership with them, and looking at the board saying, hey, to your point, let's just not just put a Cirque du Soleil ad up there and use our general content we're using across the canvas for Vegas. Let's create something special specifically for this board. And so it started with them. obviously we put that out to the local out of home world and the national out of home world. And I think brands really started to get excited. And that's where you see that Hard Mountain Dew, the Aristocrat. So we even have, Cirque du Soleil going back to the drawing board now and saying, how do we make this even better for next year? Or you have Aristocrat, who is, invested the type of money they did on that particular ad, and maybe hopefully we're running longer term. So yeah, we're literally 6 months in with this board.
Wow.
So I can only imagine what's going to come, as our team's out there kind of pushing it and sharing these really cool creative opportunities. Can only imagine for next year, some of the really cool things we're about to see.
It's exciting. And as we're having more conversations coming into the end of the year, one of the, and I don't know if it's a sign of the times or maybe just a reflection of some more of the conversations with the types of brands we're working with over at One Screen, but I'm seeing more creative teams get pulled into the conversation earlier than I have historically.
Interesting.
Purely anecdotal, sample size of one, but over the last 6 weeks, I've seen more creative teams involved from the brand side in the planning phase, which is really exciting because I think anytime we can get the creative folks in the room and really seeing the formats and the opportunities and how they can be used together to create a campaign, that's when exciting stuff starts to happen.
Oh, no, it's huge. Yeah, no, I agree with you 100%. What's cool too is, we, our sister agency is called a Company 8 ad group. And, they obviously kind of act and work on their own, but they work with us on this particular screen. So when we brought the screen on board to our inventory, we had them really kind of become the experts on the screen and how the creative's built. And so it's nice because we have them as a internal asset to be able to lend a helping hand on ideas, because the 3D, the layout of it is completely different, right? There are certain rules you have to follow, particular to the screen from what the viewing angles are. So it's exciting stuff for sure.
Right, it's still just a two-dimensional surface, so it really is a lot of magic of the eye and the design that's creating that effect, and there's no projection that's coming out of the screen. That's just all creative chops, which is amazing.
Yeah, no, it is. And I don't know if I addressed the question you had earlier on the feedback with the clients, but the clients, obviously some of them being local, will go out there, watch the ads. And they're the biggest takeaway for me hearing from them was they want to create memorable moments through a tourist journey on the Strip. And, it's one thing to have the big splash, one thing to have the right frequency in place and obviously have the assets in the right, areas for a good out of home campaign. But when they talked about the memorable moments and the association with the Lids board, because of the 3D element, is I would say probably the most, valuable feedback that we've had, that they're just willing to invest just to capture that sort of experience from a tourist standpoint. And you have the photos and the pictures and the reposting and all that. So for a client a brand to understand that, it's more about creating that experience, through this, obviously, epic board is, it's nice to hear.
It's pretty special, right? It's taking what would otherwise just be an ad and turning it into a memorable experience for somebody who's in Vegas, right? Like, it is part of the experience. We talk a lot about micro moments, and right, these are all inflection points in a real world buyer's journey. And if you can create that moment where I'm remembering your ad as an experience, a part of my trip, versus I saw your ad on Facebook again for the 1500th time this week, like, which of those matters more from a brand standpoint? Sure, you get one pretty report from Facebook that says how many people clicked on it, but just as good fundamental marketers, like, yeah, I'd rather create the brand experience that these people are going to be telling their kids about 2 decades from now. I'll never forget when I saw a buffalo explode out of a billboard. Exactly. That's incredible. Like, I don't know. That's the stuff that gets me excited about it. So Jeremie, what are some of the things that folks get wrong in Vegas? You've been there obviously for such a long time. You're so familiar with out of home. what are the things that brands miss when they're activating in Vegas? Let's say specifically for a conference. We get a lot of brands who are participating in conferences and they could be at different venues, et cetera, but they're not necessarily seeing the ROI of being in a booth and being on the conference floor. So they want to use out of home to activate around the conference and create a larger than life, impact for folks who might be attending that. What are the things that you got to get right, and what are the things that maybe kind of get missed in planning for Vegas?
Yeah, great question. I think the things that you have to get right, in addition to being missed, right, is I think especially when you look at conferences, you either have the Las Vegas Convention Center, you've got the Mandalay Bay Convention Center, you have the Venetian. There's multiple ones on the Strip. They're in very different areas, right? And so I think what these brands miss is the fact, yes, do you have to take the journey, whether you're driving in from a feeder market or flying in? How are these customers going from the airport to the convention center itself? I think what's missed is, what are they doing in before and after the show? And what they're doing before and after the show is they're walking up and down the Strip. They're going out to eat, either hosting clients or being a client themselves. And so they're missing that journey when they're not on the convention floor, which I think is the journey that can really resonate with the brand. Imagine sitting there eating at the Bellagio fountains and you're overlooking the Strip, and all of a sudden on a marquee, there's your potential client's ad or your brand's ad playing over and over again. Or imagine walking up and down, being a conventioneer, and seeing a mobile billboard truck or a taxi ad or a touchdown tower. So I think they miss the Vegas experience. I think they may kind of run into the trap of, oh, we're at Mandalay Bay and I only want inventory around Mandalay Bay. Well, that's fine, and obviously don't miss that. But you got to really think about what people are doing before and after. They may even be coming into market a day or two ahead of time, bringing their family, enjoying Vegas. They may be staying after, or even both. So I think they miss, and I don't think people coming here for a conference go to bed at night after they've eaten. You may have
sure.
But this is not the town for that, right? So it's 24/7. It's happening all the time. And I know when we have the conversations, we can hear almost a light bulb go off. The client's going, oh, I didn't really think about that. I was just thinking around the route to the Venetian or the Sands Convention Center. So yeah, I would say that would be a really important element that they miss. Or that I think should be more part of the conversation. If there's any mistake made, I would say a wrong turn in Vegas can kind of take you from the limelight, from an outdoor and out of home standpoint, to being in the right spot to really being in the wrong spot. Okay. There are real key avenues on how to get from the airport to the Strip, or when you're on the Strip, kind of to and from. And so historically, you may have a market that's a bit more kind of open and broad. And hey, as long as I'm generally around the area, I'm good, because there's so many avenues in and out and about. The Vegas market, we talk about the Strip corridor, is so tight and compact that if you're on a board that may sound good, or it may look on a map like, oh, it's right there, but if it's on the wrong, left-hand turn away from a location, or if it's, on the Strip, which sounds good, but it's behind 5 palm trees, which there are those.
Yeah.
Like it could look like a great buy, and you could almost be at a zero impact, in my opinion. So I would say, and I think that the Vegas market here is really strong, from a vendor standpoint. I think there's a lot of continuity between a lot of the companies here. People have been here for a long time. So I'm really confident they're having those conversations,
Mhm.
but if they're not, those are things brands need to be really aware of, because again, you could be a quarter mile off kind of track, and it's just not money well spent.
And that's, I think, one of the things that's most beautiful about our industry is there's no data tool, there's no targeting tool that can explain the nuance of a local market like boots on the ground. And that's what's so special about Of Home. It's not just a billboard. It's not just data that says this is the billboard. It's understanding all of those dynamics, understanding that, hey, this road that's traditionally really good is closed right now because they're doing a construction project and a quarter mile of it's shut. So 80%, right? Like if you don't know these things, you got to ask the questions. There's so many great folks in the markets that can give you this type of insight if you ask.
Yeah. No, it's so true. Like even too, if you don't mind, I'll give you
Please.
So if you're at the convention center, right? They host the biggest ones, CES, so on, so forth. So if you go north of the convention center versus having inventory going south, which is when you go south is really the heartbeat of the strip. You go from the Wynn to Mandalay Bay. That's what everybody knows the Las Vegas Strip of. If you go north, you could be even closer, but you really only have one property, being the Sahara, that's about a mile down that way, that is really even a relevant property. So if you were to buy a placement going north versus going south, I mean, Tim, you're talking night and day.
Wow.
And so yeah, that's even a small nuance that people may not realize, that the convention center is on the far end of the North Strip. You pretty much, for the most part, don't want to go any further than that. You want to go everything south.
South of that.
South. But if you're not familiar with the market and you just think, oh my gosh, this is like right there, but it's north, yeah.
Wow, sure. You're just on the wrong side of the tracks, and it's not a good place to be.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think it's a testament to Out of Home to have folks like yourself that understand the markets, not just how traffic flows, but the formats, how these things all work together. And I really appreciate you sharing that here today. Jeremie, what are the Latin long? How can folks get in touch with you? Where do they connect with Spotlight Outdoor? Give them all the details on how to learn more and connect with you for their next conversation about Las Vegas.
No, thank you, Tim. Go on to spotlightoutdoorads.com. Pretty much has all of our information. We're heavily active on LinkedIn. It's kind of really the one platform. If you want to see all of our information, what the latest and the greatest is, check us out there. If you want to call, 702-210-7750. We'll make sure we kind of point you in the right direction. But yeah, that's how you can get a hold of Spotlight.
Well, I'm sure you're going to be hearing from folks after this drops. We get so many requests for Las Vegas. The conference is becoming increasingly popular for these brands to be spending outside of the convention. I think that this is going to be an episode that lives on in perpetuity and pays lots of dividends. So, Jeremie, I couldn't thank you enough for being here.
Thank you very much, Tim. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. If you found this to be helpful, please share it with somebody who could benefit. As always, make sure to smash that subscribe button, and we'll see y'all next time.
Quarter century, I finally came to my senses. I finally got my hand up on the tinted Benz, kid. I see the world clear through my tinted lenses. With the dream and the drive, the possibilities endless. Now print that, send this all the way to Tokyo. Take a trip down south, down to Mexico. Next stop, Shanghai, the world-class trade show. First class all the way, cause that's how we roll. Yeah, call us the rock star businessman. Rockin' shows we handle business, man. We got our own future in the palm of our hands.